Hi, and welcome to SPMinar, our monthly online gathering for live theater prop professionals and anyone interested in stage props. I'm Ben Homan, Vice President and 24-year member of SPAM and the props director at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. SPAM was formed in 1994 to create a fellowship among prop professionals to address issues of common importance and to create parity with other production areas. We are an association of professional prop educators and managers from not-for-profit producing organizations with an international communication and support network that shares resources, information, solutions, and techniques, as well as safety information, continuing education, and the use of our stock. We promote the highest professional standards among prop artisans and craftspeople in the field of props to potential prop professionals, while working to establish educational standards for the training of prop artisans. We now have over 150 active members, reaching from Hawaii to Ireland and Canada to Florida. As with previous SPMinars, we're requesting pay-what-you-can donations to help support this programming and our annual grants for early career prop professionals. If you can afford to donate, the link will be in the chat during the session. We truly appreciate any help you can give. We've enabled live transcription for this webinar. If you'd like to use them, click on the live transcript button on the bottom and then select Show Subtitle. Alternatively, you can click View Full Transcript to see it in the meeting side panel. I'm joined tonight by Kirsten Harrison, Larry Heyman, and Karen Robbie Vance to talk about consumable food on stage and how we as prop managers navigate different food requests and allergies while still having the food served look like what it's supposed to. Be sure to stay to the end to see who won a copy of Kirsten and Tammy's book, The Fake Food Cookbook, and to hear about what we have in store for you in season 3 of SPMinar. The book winner will be chosen randomly from everyone in attendance tonight. I would love to begin by having each panelist introduce themselves and tell us how they got to where they are. Kirsten, get us started.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kirsten. I have been doing props for, gosh, I guess 20 years at this rate now. I just turned 35. I went to undergrad. I went to grad school. I worked at Utah Shakes with Ben, who helped mentor me. And now I am a technical theater director, production director at a private high school in Raleigh, North Carolina, helping to inspire the next generation of artisans. I was very fortunate that I got to write the first book on fake food with Tammy Honesty, who is actually on this Zoom right now, which is awesome. And I am happy to be here.
Awesome. Larry.
Ben. Hi, my name's Larry Heyman. I've been a props person for 36 years. I actually got my start at the Utah Shakespeare Festival before Ben was there. I think I actually am one of the few that can say that, who's still working. Anyway, I have worked back and forth across the country for 36 years in Utah, at the La Jolla Playhouse, at the Goodman Theater, at the Huntington Theater. I've worked for Paramount Pictures Corporation, Fox Searchlight, and a bunch of other film production companies. And for the past 10 years, I have been teaching in a props curriculum at Oklahoma City University. And I've always had a fascination with sort of the props chemistry, alchemy, and food conglomeration. It's just one of the things that I've always enjoyed. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. And Karen.
Hey, that's me. I'm the only one of us who's never worked at Utah Shakespeare, so there's that. I know. Hey, Ben, I think you tried to get me out there one year and I just couldn't make it. I am I'm Karen Robbie Vance. I'm the current president of the Society of Props Managers and the head of props at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've only been here for about 4 months. Prior to that, I spent a quick 9 months in California at the Geffen Playhouse. And prior to that, I was at the Alley Theater in Houston for 17 years. And actually, most of the stuff you'll hear me talk about tonight is actually stuff we did at the Alley. Prior to that, I spent time at Studio Arena Theater in Buffalo, New York, may it rest in peace, and Merrimack Repertory Theater in Lowell, Massachusetts. So my entire career has been spent in the regional theater side of things. So I think I'm going to get us kicked off on this tonight. So I am actually going to share my screen. Let's see. Here's hoping everybody can see that. Kirsten, can you see that? No? Yeah, awesome. So what I'm gonna actually talk about is not kind of the ins and outs of what to use for this or how to get around allergies or things, which we will get to later. I want to talk about those shows that have full on dinner scenes. I feel like I get one every 2 or 3 years. This picture is actually from August Osage County at the Alley Theater. This is also from August Osage. It was a full on dinner scene, prepped off stage, carried on stage and eaten, including a green bean casserole that's thrown on the floor that we actually made from green beans and real food. I need to move that away from my notes. Some of the other shows I've done have full meals is The Humans, which is a full Thanksgiving meal, Dividing the Estate, which is a full kind of Southern dinner, Southern Texas dinner, and Shirley Valentine, which actually had a full functioning kitchen on stage and the actress cooked a meal on stage. So I'm curious in the comments, what are some shows that you've done that have had like a full meal or just tons and tons of food? Another one that comes to mind is One Man, Two Governors. A lot of that's fake, but got a lot of food. This is The Humans. The gentleman at the back, kind of at the head of the table that you see is Chris Salazar, is an actor. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. He loves to cook. He would come in with fresh baked bread for folks every night and like full salads. Like he would just cook at home and bring food in for folks. But because he is a cook in his personal life, he wanted to prep and make as much of the food for the Thanksgiving dinner on stage as possible every night. Which made for an awfully long consumables list, but he was fantastic to work with. He's a great partner on stage for that show. This show is Dividing the Estate. This is the Southern dinner I was talking about. The Alley partnered with a restaurant in town. You can actually see the chef of the restaurant, the owner and chef, Eloise, standing. She's in the black top there. She'd actually seen the show Dividing the Estate in New York. It was set in her hometown of Wharton, Texas. And because the show resonated with her and the food resonated with her, she actually reached out to our managing director when she saw it on the season and said, I would like to provide all the food for your show, which is amazing. I've partnered with a couple different restaurants over the years, and this was the most seamless process I've ever had in doing that. Interestingly, and we'll talk about oysters later in the thing, I think, Larry, I'm looking at you, but in this photo, I don't know, y'all probably can't see it. Can you see my pointer? This little platter right here is fried oysters, which we did not actually serve the actors. This photo was staged for promotion purposes. So she brought in a bunch of food and it is not actually what they ate because the actors were like, we are not eating 3-day-old fried oysters on stage because we only picked up food 3 times a week. So what do we need to consider when, aside from allergies and food requests, when doing a show full of food? Budget is a big thing. When you have that much food in the show, it is going to impact your budget. It is going to cost money and you need to set that money aside in the beginning, regardless if your budget's $500 or $5,000 or $50,000, which I've never had a budget that big, but maybe someday. I don't want a budget that big, I lie. It's going to impact it. Do you have a member of the crew or stage management who can be dedicated to nothing but food prep? Because it's a lot. There's a lot of time dedicated to it. What is your accessibility to a kitchen or a cooking space? If there's not a backstage kitchen or a green room kitchen, where can you create one with a mini fridge and a microwave and a toaster oven? And if anybody can figure out how to get a toaster oven to not ding when it's done and to be silent, you're my hero, because they always have to be in a different space because they make noise. If your kitchen space, if you don't have a kitchen space, is your cleanup space separate? Where is it? What is access to it? We were talking before this, and we did a show offsite at the University of Houston one year, and I recall us actually washing dishes in the bathroom because it was the only sink where we could get hot enough water to sanitize the dishes every night. Bonus points if you have a dishwasher. And is there actual cooking on stage? I mentioned Shirley Valentine. We did a full kitchen. She had a full stove. She fried an egg. She made bacon. I think Clyde's, which is going around. We did Floyd's here at the Guthrie a few years ago. I wasn't here for it. There's a lot of cooking in that. So on stage cooking. So what impacts did cooking on stage have? If I were to do this now, Shirley Valentine, we had a real electric stove on stage, I'd probably use induction if I could afford it. What are some pros to doing full dinner scenes, to having that much food? Because there are some. How much of it actually needs to be edible? Can some of it be fake? And is that where you save money in your budget? Is everybody just eating the green beans? Do they really have to eat the meatloaf? It does offer the ability to cater to a wide range. If you have 15 people on stage or 12 people on stage eating, and they all have different allergies, or one's gluten-free, one's sugar-free. If you're gluten-free, don't eat the rolls. Eat something else. If you're dairy-free, don't eat the mashed potatoes, because we put butter in them just to make them taste a little bit better. The possibility of partnering with a restaurant or caterer, and the possibility of having working kitchen elements on stage. For me, having a working refrigerator on stage that is plugged into live power, that means it is cold 24/7. It doesn't get hot when they turn the board off, which I have found unfortunate circumstances before, are great, because then you can store your food in the fridge on the set. Bonus points. Serves two purposes. There are also some cons, possibly having a full working kitchen on stage. That's a whole different set of prop circumstances. The quantity of food needing to be prepared, it can get really expensive, especially now with the cost of food going through the roof. Setup and cleanup time is extensive, and figuring out how to hold food at the correct temperature on stage so that it remains safe to eat. You don't want to set out a glass of milk at half hour that they don't drink till the end of Act 1, because nobody wants an hour and a half old glass of milk. Also, there's a chance of introducing bacteria and things if food's set out for too long. So that's something to consider. So what are some things to consider when approaching it? I just want to say this photo is of the actress Shirley Valentine, whose name I don't recall at the moment, but she was a pro. She was fantastic. She's actually peeling a potato in this photo. I don't remember potatoes in the show, but it was almost 20 years ago, so forgive me. So approaching propping a dinner scene, the stage management team are going to be your best friends. Perhaps you're the stage manager and the prep person, then you're already your best friend. You're going to need to work with them or your company managers to get the food allergies and requests at the start of the rehearsal process. I was talking to Sue Brockman, who runs the prop shop at Children's Theater here in Minneapolis, and she was telling me about their production of Matilda a few years ago. One of the actors failed to tell them about their food allergies, and there's a chocolate cake that they have to eat or eat the icing off of. And it wasn't until the kid got fairly sick, they called the parent, and the parent's like, oh yeah, they can't have sugar and they have all these other allergies. So they ended up switching to organic black bean paste. So get those allergies up front, and encourage people to tell you about their preferences, because while we can't always cater to preferences, it's good to know up front, because you don't want to present something that they're going to be flat out, I hate chocolate. Discuss with your stage management team and the director when you're going to introduce food, because if you do it while it's still in the rehearsal hall or before you hit tech rehearsals, that's going to be added cost. So that is going to have an impact on what you can accomplish for the show. If it's possible, I just hit on this, include the actors in the choices of what they'll be eating before tech, and let them know if there's limitations. If they want real caviar, they're not going to get real caviar, but they can get some seedless jam that's going to look a lot like caviar. Can they have sugar, or does it have to be sugar-free? Those kind of conversations. Determine the schedule and who will be picking up food and when. Plan out your prep space and your tools needed. It sucks to get to tech and realize that you don't have a measuring cup. Train the crew or whoever's handling the food on proper food handling and preparation. And organization and preparation, always, not just food, it's just always everything. This is a list of the consumables for the humans. And I know the print is small. There was a lot of food in the show. We set a schedule at the alley that we picked up food every Tuesday and Friday. So every Sunday night and Thursday night, the stage managers included in their report what they were short on or what they needed more of. So we would know what to get for them the next day. So this is like, he was prepping full salads, he was chopping carrots. I will tell you, him having a sharp knife scared me just a little bit, but he never cut himself. So he was setting out all kinds of different things for them to snack on before the meal, and then prepping the full meal also on stage. He did not have an oven though. All he had was a working refrigerator. So this is the food list for August OSAGE. Also a full dinner, much shorter list. As you can see, we did more of this prep backstage and not on stage. So a lot of it was hidden from, well, it was all hidden. It was just brought out complete. If you're working with a restaurant or a caterer, or you have somebody who is going to provide this food for you, here's just a few things that I've learned over the years. Questions to ask. How is their food prepared? Restaurants use a lot of stuff that bulk up their food a little bit. They cook a lot in butter. They cook a lot in oils because all that stuff adds flavor. That might be something that your actors can't have. How much added salt is there? Are they using vegetable stocks or are they using beef chicken? If you have a vegetarian, obviously you don't want to serve them something cooked in beef stock. Then make sure that the restaurant is willing and able to adjust their recipes to the food allergies or the requirements of the actors. Some restaurants aren't, just gonna say, I'm not gonna cook without butter, I'm sorry. That may not be the partner for you. Set a regular pickup and drop off schedule. It helps the restaurant plan their ordering and their prep time, and it ensures that food is gonna be kept safe during transport and storage. Especially if they're dropping it off, you don't want them to drop it off when there's nobody there to get it and put it in a fridge. And then overestimate by 10 to 20%, I would err towards 20% of what you think you'll need at each pickup, because you don't want to run out during tech. Because if you do, it's going to be hard to get more. Yeah, so then food safety. This is my big thing. Because we, aside from allergies and all this stuff, we don't want to make actors sick on stage. So it is incredibly important that anyone handling food follow proper food handling procedures. There are a lot of resources out there for learning what those are. And I will tell you, I do have my food handler's license, and while I thought I was pretty good, there are a few things I did learn about the proper temperatures to hold food at, and how long it can be held before it needs to be go back into a refrigerator. So it is worthwhile to do a little research on this. The USDA has a ton of valuable resources on the website, including a downloadable kitchen companion guide, which you see pictured here. And if food handling courses are generally state by state, like my license is actually from Texas, so I can't really do food handling here if I needed to, in Minnesota. So I would need to retake a course. But the city of New York actually has a free food preparation course that you can take. If you want to get the certification for New York City, it's only $24. Don't need to do that, but really lessons 2 through 9 are really helpful as an introduction to food safety and storing food and health hazards and all of that, and just getting educated. And this is a lot, so I actually have some links for you. I'll be sharing this whole thing as a PDF out later. I'll send you links, and it will be in your feedback survey email that you get later, so you'll have links to these. And we're going to talk about some of these other things, but some of our members of SPAM sent us some creative solutions to things. I'm actually not going to leave this up long, because I think almost everything that's on here we're going to talk about, but the one that really got me was the bananas sliced lengthwise fried in teriyaki sauce that was meant to look like an anchovy sauce that for hay fever that Tim Hogan at PCPA talked to me about. And I'm like, bananas in teriyaki sauce. And he's like, it was surprisingly good. So might be worth trying. I also like the spice cake and strawberry jelly as a meatloaf. So let's see if I can figure out how to stop sharing my screen. And I'm gonna pass it back to Ben. Stop share. There we go. Aha. Or I guess
Okay.
I'll open it up to Larry and Kirsten.
Yeah, so Larry's going to talk a little more about sort of replacement options and things like that as far as what you need to do on stage. So Larry.
Hi, everybody. So just echoing what Karen said, I too have a food handling license. That was a really short, I mean, it's a short course, a short test. And in the state of Oklahoma, I think it was $12, but I don't remember for sure, but it covers the entire state. It's not city by city here. And it's super important because it incorporates things like just, you know, reminding you, it seems stupid, but reminding you about hand washing, reminding you about bleach wash, reminding you about working on, you know, buying some clean cutting boards and having a clean work surface that you only use for food prep in your shop. All super important. One of my favorite things we did, the challenge that I have faced a couple of times, and I see that Lori Harrison posted some as well, and she's at the San Francisco Opera, and they probably do some pretty luxurious stuff. But I've done 2 productions now where the directors asked for oysters. And the first thing is you can get oyster shells from most restaurants that serve oysters. I know that Lori talks about using clean ones, you know, taking them, boiling them, scrubbing them, cleaning them. But the other thing that you can do is I took an imprint off of one just using thermoplastic and made my own thermoplastic oyster shells so that I wasn't working with an organic material at all. It was a plastic shell. But then the product that I love, and I use it in my stage blood and in lots of other stuff, is called pharmaceutical food thickener. And it's made specifically, it's available at chain pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS, they both have it. It comes in a relatively large tub, and it's specifically made for people who have had some sort of issue where they've developed a swallowing disorder. And it is a completely, for as close as you can come to a completely benign hypoallergenic substance that miraculously just absorbs water and thickens food. And so our miracle oysters for Deflator Mouse and Present Laughter were these plastic shells that we built, and then we filled a squeeze bottle with white Gatorade, the Frost white Gatorade, and food thickener. And the food thickener takes about 15 minutes to work. And then you can shake it up and sort of squeeze it into the shell and let it stand. And it forms a little amorphous blob that can then be consumed by the actor. And the flavoring is primarily Gatorade, but you can use anything that will create that sort of gray color. You can also do it with, you know, gelatin or flavored juices. But the food thickener is a really cool discovery. So that was one that I did. I saw that Lori mentioned ice cream, and I'm told about people using mashed potatoes as ice cream. And it's really funny because if you have a freezer that gets cold enough, if you have a freezer that you can get down to you know, below zero, the normal freezers get to about between 10 degrees and 0. And if you can get a freezer below 0, one of the things that you can do is pre-scoop sugar-free sherbet and put it into cones and then refreeze it. And it will last for quite a while on stage if you refreeze it for 12 to 24 hours. And so we did a production of Street Scene, where they come on stage eating ice cream, and rather than giving opera singers mashed potatoes to eat, we gave them sugar-free, so it doesn't stain their costumes if they drip. But sugar-free refrozen sherbet worked really well. And then one of the popular ones that I did was Brighton Beach Memoirs, where there's actually a kind of a noted moment in the script where they describe eating liver and cabbage. And, you know, honestly, nobody in their right mind wants to put real liver and cabbage on stage. At least I don't. I like liver, but I wouldn't put it on stage. And so we went through a variety of different things and discovered that pumpernickel bread cut into shapes with dark rye, basically cut into shapes and then spread with Nutella, created a pretty realistic looking liver that the actors could cut into pieces and eat without, you know, gagging and heaving. And then I had an assistant who was experimenting with things. And for the cabbage, we did super thinly sliced green apple that we just ran through a food processor and created this sort of shaved green apple that could be piled on the plate, and created a pile that looked like boiled cabbage, even though it wasn't. Excuse me. So those two items were amazing. And then I've done a production of Wilderness, which is set in Maine. And one of the comments that they make is that it's Sunday dinner and that they're having I don't remember what the soup is, but they're having lobster for dinner. And so we actually we vacuum formed half lobster shells. And then we were looking for things to fill them with that they could sort of pull out and have it look like they were eating real lobster. And we tried mashed potatoes and the actors hated that. And so again, we kind of experimented a little bit, and we took Ready Whip and put Ready Whip whipped cream into the shell and then put it into the freezer for a little while, so that when you take it out and you stick a fork in it, it sort of breaks off, but you put it into your mouth and it's like cotton candy. I mean, it dissolves right away, and it was super easy for the actors to swallow and eat. Just touching on something that Karen said, you know, one of the things that I kind of focus on is I try not to serve anything cold that should be served hot, and I try not to serve anything hot that should be served cold, both for appetizing reasons and just because sanitarily it just kind of makes sense to serve it at the temperature it's intended to be. So I'm a little fixated on that. And then the other thing that I'm kind of fixated on is anytime I can give actors something that is completely neutral, that has no flavor to it whatsoever, and simply looks the part, that's sort of what I go for, because it just makes it easier. It gets me around dealing with food preferences. It's interesting that Karen mentioned caviar, because I actually did do caviar with boysenberry jam and little pastry cups, and then we just filled it with boysenberry jam, and the actors actually loved it. They came asking for more after the show was over with. It was actually pretty funny. But those are just some of the things that I've done. I also mentioned two things that have completely been life-changing for me, aside from the pharmaceutical food thickener, is our Americolor gel food colorings, which just tend to be a slightly higher quality food coloring that tends to be made, if at all possible, with less allergenic compounds. And then the other thing that I really love is just a bottle of acid-proof caramel coloring, which can be added to water and any number of other awesome things. So anyway, that's what I got for you right now, and I'll bounce back in when things pop into my head. But I just wanted to share those things from my personal experience. And now it's Kirsten's turn, I believe.
Thanks, Larry. Go ahead, Kirsten.
Hey, so I come from the world of where I've been teaching high school students, and getting high school students to wash their hands is super important anyways. But again, when you're trying to get a crew of a 15-year-old kid to understand, who can't cook anything barely, to understand the reality of cooking food for stage is super important. So safety is super, super key. And something, while I rely on stage management to really help, but I also am kind of there to make sure it actually is happening. But I'm in a setting where we are not allowed to use the cafeteria. We have a mini fridge, and we have a George Foreman grill, and like a toaster oven sort of situation. And so those are kind of really key components that we use to do food. Like we did a production of this firecracker where it takes place at a carnival, and there's a snow cone and there's hot dogs, and the actor of course didn't eat, it had to be very, very specific hot dogs that they could eat, and it had to be very specific buns that they had to eat, and he had to actually eat it on stage. And so dealing with making sure that it was the right temperature. No one wants to eat a cold hot dog. While you can eat a cold hot dog on stage, they are technically cooked before. Again, making sure it was the right temperature for them. The snow cone, having to actually have it real, but again, the kid had a food allergy where he had issues with food dye. I have an issue with red dye 40, so I have to be super careful on when we are dealing with food to try to avoid anything with red dye 40. There is a PDF that will be shared with all of you at the end that kind of shows some natural examples that you can use for colorants versus using, a lot of it deals with vegetable powders and stuff like that. But there is also two things on Amazon that I found. Watkins assorted food coloring, which is all more natural. You can get a tiny thing, or this Indian tree natural color decorating set that also is only done with vegetables colorants, so that also is kind of key about that. We did a production of Deadman's Cell Phone in the spring, and the kid, there's a dinner scene there, they're eating steaks, and the kid could not, we didn't want to have to make steaks every night. A, that's too costly for our budget, but B, they kind of had to sit out there for a little while, and so we ended up doing the whole watermelon route, and we didn't actually use the caramel color. We just actually took some black food coloring. We were able to we grilled it a little, and then we added some colorant around the edging to get it to more, because again, we don't want to have steak on stage and the kid can't, a lot of kids can't eat steak or whatnot like that. We had lentil soup that's at the beginning of the show, and that we had to be very particular about. We heated it, actually a little bit overheated it, so that by the time it was used, it was actually at the right temperature needing for them to eat. So again, I really try to strive, you've got to really ahead of time talk to the actors, and even in where I'm coming from, if kids don't know their own allergies, is to reach out to the parents to figure out what their allergies are, because they're going to know. Sometimes it's on a form. I mean, a lot of times stage management will send out a form, and so we're able to kind of gauge that. But there's kids who don't even know that they have allergies, and then all of a sudden we're like having an issue. We did a production of Hairspray, and there's a big scene in the radio station where we had tons of fake food, but we also had real food, and the director really wanted to have deviled eggs on stage. It was like they wanted them to eat deviled eggs. But I was like, we're not having eggs on stage. That is a terrible idea. Never going to do it. We ended up using marshmallows, cutting them and shaping them and doing a little bit of icing on them, and the kids loved it because it got them a little bit sugared up, but also it was something that was easily, they could eat, safety, under the lights, and no one's eating eggs. I try to avoid eggs if possible on anything. We use a lot of the mashed potatoes routes and stuff like that if need be. Again, we don't have a place where we can get the hottest hot water. So, but no one wants to wash dishes inside of a paint sink because it's a paint sink and it looks terrible. So we just get the hot water and we take it into a different sink washroom area to make sure that everything is super clean. We actually are investing, I think we're going to invest in a tabletop dishwasher to help also make sure that we're sanitizing everything super careful, because just, the way of the world and germs and stuff like that, we really don't need anybody to be getting sick, not the crew, not the actors. We want the production to be going well, sort of deal. So that's kind of what I, touch base on that. I think the budget is super key, because gluten-free and a lot of that stuff do cost more. So you have to factor that into what's going to happen. And if you're going to do, I try to make as much fake food as possible, just because I love to make fake food. So anytime that I can actually make fake food in a show, I'm going to do it. But there are times where you just can't get around it. Like, Deadman's Cell Phone, the steak, they had to actually eat it on stage, sort of deal. So yes. And then also if somebody has, like, if they have an allergy and they actually have preferences and they have products that they use and goods, if they've got a bread that works really well for something, and we can, take it over, like Larry, you were talking about the liver using pumpernickel bread. If there is a rye, like a gluten-free version, utilize it. You use the strengths of the people who have the allergies, who have lived through that, to adapt whatever you need to adapt to. And I think that's a lot. That's what I've got off the top of my head. I'm happy to chime in with any answers or for questions that people have from the chat, if there are any.
Awesome. Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, feel free to throw stuff in the chat. The one thing SB Kate's mentioned a little bit ago, food safety is really difficult. So whenever they can, they replace real meat or cheese prop with something sugary because it's more shelf stable. They replaced a piece of a silicone beef tongue that had to be bitten off with properly colored fondant. So Karen's going to throw back up the last slide of her presentation that had a bunch of suggestions from other SPAM members. But if people have questions or thoughts they want to throw in the chat, feel free to do so.
I will also go ahead, Larry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say one of the other things that I would sort of exhaust is there a fruit item that resembles whatever it is we're playing around with? And also Karen makes a great point about, excuse me, making friends with restaurant owners. And I just recently discovered that I am friends with a pastry chef in town. And what's really neat is the number of things that she is able to make out of sugar cookies and icing. And for deviled eggs, she has a great looking sort of the yellow icing that I think would probably pass really well for egg yolk. So I love that. I have to ask, Karen, was that Wheezy from Wheezy's Table in your picture?
It
Yes.
was. She's
one of my favorite places in town. Yeah.
Yeah. I will also say in the allergy front, I once had an actor who self-described, let me back up, an actor who in the course of the play was supposed to eat an entire Twinkie. And I don't mean like take bites of the Twinkie. I mean, she was supposed to take the Twinkie and shove the whole thing in her mouth at once. And when I met with her, she's like, I self-described, I am so diabetic that if I look at a Twinkie, I will go into diabetic shock. That is a level of food
Sorry.
that I was not prepared for. So I started talking to her, and this was 23 years ago. And she started talking to me about things that are now that we're all familiar with in terms of like wheat germ and food stabilizers. I think the xanthan gum was one of the things she was talking about. But 20-something-year-old me, no clue. And I'm like, you know what? I don't feel safe making this food for you. I will pay you to make your own Twinkies. And so I did. I paid her, and twice a week, she brought in a pan of Twinkies that she made for herself. I will tell you, they did not look appetizing, but they sort of looked like Twinkies, and we put them in sterile packaging, and that's what she ate every night. And we all felt safer for it. I did not feel like I had to wait to see the rehearsal report the next day to make sure that she hadn't like been rushed to the hospital. So that's an option as well. Looking at this list, I'm curious if any of y'all have used agar-agar or xanthan gum or guar gum or other substitutes like that on stage, and in what way?
I have.
Go ahead, Larry.
I have. I was just going to say I haven't.
Have you been?
I have not. I was just thinking, we did a production of The Diary of Anne Frank a couple of years ago, and they're all starving in the attic, so there's not enough food, and then they get the cake for the birthday or the anniversary, I can't remember, but they all have to like devour this cake. So it can't be like individual servings and stuff. And of course, of the 8 actors on stage, one was lactose intolerant, one had a wheat allergy, there's like 3 or 4 different food allergy issues, not preferences, but actual allergy issues. But they all had to eat this cake. And the director like wanted it to be like they were just like pigs in a trough, just chowing it down. And so we finally found a baker in town that made it was applesauce, was basically the liquid. And I don't even know, I tasted it and I thought it tasted absolutely disgusting, but they all loved it. And all of them were safe. And this baker just made us, 4 cakes a week. But sometimes you can't individualize, like you were talking about earlier, Karen, having being able to separate out and say, oh, okay, this is your serving because of your allergy or whatever and stuff. And this was like a thing where everybody had to eat the same thing. And it was probably the biggest food challenge that I've had to deal with in my career.
It's funny you say that, because actually this past week it was one of my staff members' birthdays, and she has a ton of food allergies, including she can't do gluten. She can do sugar, but in small doses, but no dairy. So I made a cake that everybody thought was a glutinous, buttery, delicious cake, score me, but it had paleo flour, so it was completely gluten-free. Eggs were replaced with applesauce, so it was dairy-free. There were no other butters in it, and I used vegan butter in the icing. So aside from the sugar in the icing, it probably would have been a winner. So if you need that recipe, I got that for you. Maybe I'll have to share that too.
And Tammy shared in the chat that Jim Guy made a great fish fillet out of crescent rolls for a show.
Yeah, we've also done the gruel and porridge chunky applesauce trick actually in Emma, that was just here, and apparently a lot of theaters are doing now. So if you're doing Emma and you need a big bowl of gruel, applesauce.
I will say that those, just bouncing off of what Tammy said, those tube, biscuits and crescent rolls and all those things, combined with a waffle iron or a griddle that closes like a sandwich press, you can make some amazing stuff, and you can play with it and shape it. And and the other thing that has completely been world changing for me recently is just the presence of all the different shaped silicone molds that are suddenly available, and the fact that you can buy on Amazon silicone mold making compound that is food safe and heat safe, and make your own molds. We actually experimented with that. We cast real shrimp using a silicone mold, and then poured gelatin and other stuff into it to make the shrimp for School for Lies, because they come in the contemporary adaptation of School for Lies. There's a character who comes on stage, I think 11 times, with a different tray of canapes, and each time the tray gets knocked out of his hand. But on each tray, they wanted something that somebody could take something off of and eat. So we were challenged by making fake food and real food that sat next to each other and looked real. So
cool. Say one of the other things we've done, we had an actor who was chocolate averse, and for some reason kept getting cast in shows that required her to eat chocolates. And we found that a lot of the fruit leathers would work really well, and actually were manipulable, so we could actually make them look like little bonbons and things like that, so she could pick up and nibble on those as a food safe alternative to chocolate. So
well, one of the things that I mentioned as we were doing the setup for this is, we have a pretty large opera program here, and we do 2 operas per year. And inevitably, we have one director who loves adding edibles, adding like consumables to the show. And you're faced with the challenge of what can an actor who's singing opera eat and then continue to sing on stage. And right now we're doing Hansel and Gretel, and the challenge is it's not an allergy, but we too have a chocolate averse actress playing Hansel. And so we're looking for things that come from the basket of chocolates that look like something chocolatey, but that the actor can eat and continue to sing. And the solution that I came up with was just seedless black grapes.
Yeah.
Look like bonbons. So
yeah,
I was just
going
going
to yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to mention the singing aspect of like musicals and operas and food. It's a whole nother level of like, it has to look like a thing, but also not dry out their mouth, has to be quick to be, swallow, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, fruits, grapes, things like that, or watered down bread, which sounds disgusting, but is easy to eat.
Right.
And keeps their mouths moist and stuff.
Well, and it's especially weird when you get these method, actors. It's like, if I were singing, I'd probably want to try and figure out a way to pantomime eating, and yet these people actually want to put stuff in their mouth, and it's like, okay, well, maybe you can suggest something. I'm sorry, Ben, I feel like I cut you off.
No, it's totally fine. Tammy mentions angel food cake dissolves quickly too.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're really big here because we're repping. So our shows don't play, they play every a couple of days. So real food is a challenge there because you'd have to get it more often or whatever. So we try as much as we can to be like, can you just fake eating that? I mean, you're 30 feet away from the audience. Like,
Right.
do you really? I mean, we do have a small space where we're doing more food, but generally, yeah, the more you can get away with fake and just mime it. You're an actor. Sell this.
Right.
That
And
works.
it's funny because one of the things that I experimented with that ended up getting rejected because the actor didn't like the texture, but I experimented with meringues where it's literally just putting some meringue into a pastry bag and putting it and baking it and making little bonbons out of it. And the actor got it and didn't like the whatever. And it's just like, okay, well, I don't know what you want to do then.
We actually, this isn't bonbons, but we actually just closed a show that world premiered, Sally and Tom, as a park bench scene where two actors are eating New York street hot dogs. They wanted those hot dogs. And I will tell you that after the first couple of nights, the crew person was like, where's the rest of the hot dog? Where did they put it? Like, it wasn't in the trash can that was on stage that they were supposed to go into. They devoured those hot dogs every single night, bun and all. We gave them spicy mustard. They were happy people.
There's
And
nothing wrong. I'm a hot dog person. There is nothing wrong with a good New York or Chicago style dog. I'm sorry.
Me too, but I feel like it's hard to talk act around.
Stay the bun gets too much.
But yeah, well, and what's funny is that that thing where every once in a while you do get an actor where it's like, wow, free food, and they're just eating, and you're like, really, you're eating? Because I
Yes.
wouldn't eat that, but
Yes, we had an actor for years. He only played bit parts. He was local, but every show he would talk to the director and find a way to get food in the show. It was like, you're like upstage. Why do you need grapes? It's my business. Like, really, Chuck? Come on, budget, dude.
I'll tell you, grapes are a good solution to things too.
Yeah,
they really are.
Like every Christmas Carol I've ever done has had like grapes all the way around Present's food towers. So Present can just sit there and pop grapes.
awesome. I will mention one other show I did way back. I did the world premiere of Dinner with Friends, which I know at some point made the rounds of the regional theater circuit. And it's some food critics and some friends, and they I think they cook in 2 out of the 3 scenes on stage, like fish, like the whole, so like 2 full working kitchens. And we were talking about food safety earlier, making sure we actually sent the actors to take some cooking classes and stuff, so they were sure the fish was done. So they weren't serving parsley raw fish to other actors and everything else. So that's, yeah, if you have to cook on stage, that's a whole nother level of safety you need to be concerned about.
Well, then fire safety comes involved in that. When you got live flame on stage, it's an added bonus of situation of that.
Yeah.
Just going back to the thing that Lori Harrison mentioned about the shaped spoon. I gotta say, having a melon baller in the shop, it sounds like a really stupid thing to have, but man, you can make some really nice stuff with a melon baller and different pieces of fruit. So,
And if y'all missed that, it's Lori Harrison uses a spoon-shaped scoop of canned pear for oysters, along with a little juice to help them slide off the shell.
yeah, because that's always the bit, is they want the actors to actually eat them like they're real oysters, and then you got actors standing there and banging the oyster on their teeth trying to get it off. So yeah, it's.
My family is really disappointed in the faces I'm making right now because I'm the only one in my entire family that does not like oysters. I will eat them fried. I'm not gonna eat them.
I'll eat them fried. I've never seen the appeal of eating them on the half shell, I'll be honest.
I know.
So
I'm good.
Awesome. Well, there's nothing else in the chat that we've covered. So thank you, panelists, for sharing your knowledge. Everyone who's on here, you will the links are in the chat for Kirsten's Natural Alternatives to Color Dye and Karen's slideshow. So feel free to grab those. We will also send them out with the suggestion survey or not the suggestion survey, the survey after the thing. So thanks for a fun and informative evening. The winner of the fake food cookbook is Laura Skrauska. Hope I'm saying that correctly, of New Jewish Theater. And I will email you offline probably tomorrow to get a mailing address for you.
It's a great book. I love it.
It's a great book. I have a signed copy. You can find Spam on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So check us out there. This will actually be archived in about a week. It takes a couple days for us to edit down the video and get it onto YouTube, but this will be on YouTube with all of our other SPMinars. We're currently working on programming season 3, which will include topics such as stage weapon safety, air table for stock inventory, animatronics, and puppet building. If there's something else you'd like us to present, please let us know in the feedback survey, which is in the chat and also will be emailed to you. If you're interested in joining SPAM and are a working prop manager, director, supervisor, master, or some similar title in a nonprofit theater, opera company, or children's theater, or are an educator who teaches prop classes to prepare students for a career in props, please send our membership committee an email for more information. The email address is membership@propmanagers.org. SPMinar is produced by the Society of Prop Managers with special thanks to SPAM members Patrick Drone, Freed, Larry Heyman, Ben Homan, Stacey Horn Harper, Nikki Kulis, Amy Peter, Sarah Pugh, and Karen Robbie Vance. That's basically the committee. Thanks again for watching. And once again, please keep your suggestions for future SPMinars coming. We are taking December off to enjoy the holidays, but in January, we'll be announcing our entire season for 2023. So prop on, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. Bye, everybody.